Welcome back, warriors. Where war never ends, insanity never lasts. Don't forget to hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and brace yourselves, because from here on out there is only war. Let's go. Good God, I just cannot keep myself from talking about elves. I love elves, I love elves. I cannot say how much. Has it been 15 seconds yet? No, I'd better play it safe. I stink and love elves. And Age of Sigmar writers pretty clearly agree with me, because you look at the dwarf factions, and it's kinda mid. I can't lie, carriage and overlords are cool, don't get me wrong, but there's not a lot of them available. And whoever was in charge of the Fire Slayers clearly showed up to work drunk 90 of the time, and left after 4 hours of staring blankly at their computer. They're very underwhelming is the point I'm trying to make. But the elves of Age of Sigmar, or elves if you're a sim for copyright, good golly are they getting some love. Certainly more than the Eldar, though that's hardly a high bar to reach. We've got the Sylvaneth, who on the one hand are mostly tree people, but on the other have models that are clearly elven spirits coming out of trees. And there's Illyriel, an elf god, so the faction still counts. Then there's, of course, the item that Deepkin, who are a phenomenally creative interpretation of the elves I must say, and of course the topic of today's video, the Lumineth Realm-Lords. If you like the High Elves, then I must say, are you in for a treat? Because these guys are the High Elves. Without giving too much away right off the bat, that's certainly what they are. The ultimate expression of the archetypical High Elves, long lives, very good at magic, and an unbelievably arrogant, which is of course a quality they have 100 earned. If you wanted an unbiased video on the Lumineth Realm-Lords, you can piss off elsewhere. You're an elf simple and now chief, so instead of seeing if the Luminous are or aren't the army for you, let's see why they're the army for you in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. The Lumineth Realm-Lords are the highest High Elves to ever elf. No, I will not refer to them as Aels, they're elves, as with the other major elf faction in AOS. Their story begins in Sunesh, as all the elves that she ate from the old world, Tyrion, Teclis and Malekith, beat the snot out of her till she started Fomenic of Elf Souls, and Marathi was there the whole time, existing in the background. Yeah, she helped them set the trap for Slash. But she wasn't a god yet. So once Slash was there, she probably just held back. Anyways, after they started extracting the souls from Slaanesh, Tyrion and Teclis went to work with their share of souls, and created the item that Deepkin, and from the standpoint of gods trying to recreate their old civilization from before they sucked, they were not the High Elves at all, so Teclis almost killed them all, and started over. Battletoad mentions that there were a couple more failures after them, but eventually they figured it out. The High Elves are back baby, ruling over the realm of Heashlight. Tyrion and Tekla taught them everything they knew. Tyrion taught them how to do the stabby stabs real good, and all that physical might stuff that Teclis is never too good at in the old world. And Teclis taught them philosophy, craftsmanship, and how to shoot lasers at people who piss you off with magic. And thus did the Realm-Lords spread across Highish and make it their own. Elves, as far as the eye can see, a paradise unrivaled. They all desire to reach enlightenment and enlighten as the perfect little society of elves, and fair's fair for a while wasn't going bad for them by any means. Now this might seem like a bit of a tangent, but the Lumineth have this thing called Ether Quartz. It's the roan son of Heesh, basically. Each of the 8 Ram versions of Orkstone, only a lot less shitty to handle for the most part. And aside from being a nifty little magical rock, the Lumineth use it to boost their physical or magical prowess. Problem is, they get addicted to it. They also got incredibly full of themselves, even regardless of the Ether Quartz, more so that even the Elder or High Elves part of it was knowing that since Slaanesh was locked away, they felt they were safe. Surely their gods could deal with her again, if they did so once, right? This, dear viewer, is what we call foreshadowing, of course. There's also the fact that, while during the Age of Myth in AOS Chaos was much of a problem for a while, even ignoring Slaanesh being imprisoned towards the end, it started popping up. But for a while they just weren't a problem. So the Lumini started getting a little bit too full of themselves in their magic, and created some real spicy stuff. They started building magical superweapons that were, of course, only built for artistic purposes. They didn't plan on using it, they just wanted to show that they could. Yeah, and the Death Star was an art project. Tyrion and Tackles were too blinded by pride in remaking the High Elves to really do anything about it, at least according to the battle tone. Witty remarks between nation-states turned into her insults. And then some artist apparently decided, hang on a minute, there's a giant off laser in the garage I'm using as a conversation piece. What if I turn it on? And then the entire realm of Heist turned into a war zone of apocalyptic proportions. This was known as the Spirefall, or Akari Dara if you prefer elf-speak. I've noticed that there wasn't one big cause of this, like the Eldar Empire ending in an instant because Slaanesh was suddenly a thing. Instead, a bunch of different little escalations led to further and further ones until people were breaking out the nukes because of this. You can't really pin down an exact date on when everything went wrong, even beyond Age of Sigmar. Hating the concept of dating things regardless of timeline specifics, the nations of the Lumineth turned on each other and did their best to unmake the realm with magic. And eventually demons started showing up because no one was really checking to see if their magical weapons were being environmentally friendly or anything like that. And who else was leading the charge but the demons of Slaanesh? Probably should have double-checked. She couldn't still eat elves by proxy, so between chaos, their own hubris, and idiocy, they nearly wiped themselves out. Tyrion rallied who was left to defend the realm, and Teclis decided to go on a month-long holiday. He came back with a spirit of Haisha's moon Selenar, and so began the reinvention wars of the Lumineth. Literally, I mean, that's what they call this period in the conflicts. The reinvention. Not exactly subtle naming, but sometimes you need a hell of a reality check to wake yourself up with. Can't say I haven't been there, to be honest. After that, instead of attempting to achieve superiority by way of the usual elf method of being better than everyone else, they do so by binding with the spirits of ice. As he began taking on Teclis's teachings, they also took to the fight against chaos, slowly but surely purging it from the realm. This is the in-universe reason why they weren't in the game for a while. They were very insular, and focused solely on their own realm for a good amount of time. This is what Sigmar did before he created the Stormcast, by the way. So before you go, stupid selfish elves or something like that, the Hammer God did the exact same damn thing. Of course, during all this time they weren't completely blind to the outside world. Marathi kept bitching and moaning about Sunash eventually breaking out, and Tellus took her seriously. Granted, part of it will be her fault if/when it happens, but at least she warned people. Teclis also knew the other gods, like Malekith, were going to be up to something sooner or later, and he made sure to keep an eye on the Gash, specifically for that exact reason. He is Nardash after all. You know he's going to do something awful eventually. He had the Luminous setup system specifically designed to counter death magic, and when the Necrocoid hit, the Lumineth had defenses in place to keep the worst of the problems at bay. It still came under assault from all sorts of nasty creatures, but it was more like millions of Night Hut throughout Heist instead of billions like everywhere else, and when it came time for them to throw down, boy did they throw down. They more or less single-handedly stopped Nagash from control all, deleting the mortal realms. But Therion got revenge, an entire sequel in the making, and threw Arkan straight into the Minecraft void. Meanwhile, Tekla smashed Nagash so hard, with some help from a bunch of human wizard cannons, that he exploded and lost his body. Sure, the whole affair crippled him, but that's just a return to form for Teclis. He also helped stop the Necroquake, so the Luminous have been quite busy stealing the Stormcast role of two. Come down and save everyone. Then the heir of the beast came around, and the Lumineth's response to Kravnos and all the orcs, and ogres and whatnot running around everywhere was to bunker down and hope it stops sooner rather than later. Which is kind of a downgrade from clowning on the Gash, but it's a great shield for me to throw up when someone calls him a Mary Sue faction. Zinch, being a magic god, likes messing with them every now and then, since they're a bunch of elven wizards despite currently being little more than a particularly angry ghost. Nagash has changed his mind from largely ignoring the Lumineth, to sending massive armies of the dead at them every time Teclis blinks. But despite all this, the Lumineth are spreading across the realms in brilliant war hosts, unrivaled by any other, because I love elves and elves are the best. So the Lumineth are the best for some non-storyline background. They've divided their nations in warfare into Tyrionic and Teclian schools. Teclis' school teaches you to be Womainen and intelligent, in wizardy, and all that stuff, while Tyrion's school teaches you to be decisive and brave, while also not being a rash idiot who would draw a cursed sword that's been plaguing his bloodline for millennia. Nice to see Tyrion's gotten some character development, even if it took the last setting blowing up for him to learn his lesson. Largely the focus has been on the technically in schools for characters and whatnot, but there's still been some influence for the Tyrion side of things, and I don't doubt that we'll get more elves who prefer stabbing the wizardry in the future. The book teases that Tyrion is scouting out Malika's own realm, which seems like a pretty big tease for a future box set of a reforged dark elf sort of action against Tyrion. There's also a bunch of different nations, Illuminate, that resemble the High Elven kingdoms of old, just tweaked to reflect the Lumineth lore, rather than the High Elves just being transplanted into the future. There's two things about Tekla specifically before we move on. I want to bring him now, because I can't really fit him into the pros or cons section, but I really want to talk about him. One is that when Nagash started being himself, the biggest ever, he called the god Teclis of Ulthuan, and Teclis sets and flashbacks to his life as a crippled mortal elf, lying in bed watching Tyrion train to be the ultimate hero. It's nice to see something from Warhammer Fantasy reference, and actually directly named, rather than just the world that was, and all other sorts of roundabout little ways to avoid just saying the words Warhammer Fantasy, or directly name anything from it. The second fun little fact is that when any Lumineth mages speak with Teclis and a spirit companion, Seladar, they outright tell them they prefer to learn from Selenar, which is hilarious. They tell him that while he's very wise, they prefer to learn from the source. They're very respectful about it, and they're still happy for his teachings. But as far as they see, it's Selenar who enlightened Teclis about the changes made to Luminous society, so he's probably the better thing to go to. Teclis is just a bit better over this, but it makes Tyrion laugh his ass off. Not really super important for background or anything, I just find that phenomenal. Imagine you're an ancient Greek soldier, and the goddess Nike herself comes around and offers to teach you strategy and tactics and whatnot, instead of immediately bowing down and going, "Of course, great goddess, thank you." You go, "Now I'd rather learn from Athena." Thanks for coming by though, appreciate the visit. Poor old Teclis just can't catch a break, even though he's a god now. Now, to begin the lore prose of the Lumineth, like I said earlier, if you like High Elves then aren't you in for a good time? Because these are the highest High Elves to ever exist. They make the Thalmor look humble. They're so goddamn magical that a lot of people in the mortal realms thought they were made of pure light when they first made their grand reappearance. They bond with elemental spirits to become both spiritually enlightened and enhance their arrogance, as well as become even more magical. And as for them being a sequel to the Esser of Fantasy, there's even a few pretty goddamn direct equivalents. They have Lerier aside from having a name that's very hard to say when you are drunk, is pretty much just Tyrion crossed with the old Eltharion. Meanwhile, Alania and Elethors are Tyrion and Teclis 2.0, with Teclis even outright saying as much, and training them for that reason. You've got your classic elven spear, all to tell anyone to go to hell. You are not getting through this battle line today, and the Venari Blade Lords are quite reminiscent of the Swordmasters of Hoth, not to mention the Teclis and Eltharion are just straight up back. Sure, Eltharion is just Alphonse from Fullmetal Alchemist now, but that just means that Arkin couldn't age him to dust this time, before Eltharion put his ass in the dirt. But in saying that, they've also changed a decent bit from the High Elves of old, aside from various lore differences like their arrogance coming from a source of enlightenment nowadays, which is fun need to think about. But I digress. Their special units have been mixed up quite a bit. Instead of dragons and whatnot, they now have big giant cow mountain monster. Well, if you just wanted a copy and paste of the High Elves in AOS, you might be disappointed. I think this is a good thing. Sure, it's a damn shame I can't get my hand on old High Elven models anymore, aside from eBay listings at 500 times market value. But the fact Illuminati are their own unique thing, while still being a High Elf action, is nice. The kangaroo horse things are very weird and out there, but in a good and goofy kind of way. And overall, there's a lot of creativity behind this army. Speaking of being different to High Elves, are you sick of elves always being a dying race? If so, then step right up. Not only are they not dying out, the Lumineth have in fact been reclaiming lost territory and spreading holdouts throughout the lands for some time now. While Sunesh still likes Sylvan Souls in fantasy, she doesn't just instantly hoover them up upon one of them dying. Even back in original fantasy they had time to run to a waste stone or wait for an elf god to grab them before Sunesh did, and now that she's locked up, it's even harder to grab elf souls than ever before. Beyond that, they have no problems with either horribly declining birth rates or their main powers in the mortal realms wanting them dead, because, you know, bad. That's not to say everyone loves them, but for once you don't have to always have the factory races on the back foot hanging over your army if you want to go for the Lumineth, which, I gotta say, is a very refreshing change of pace for Warhammer. They also get out of the realms quite a bit more than the Eldar ever have, or even the High Elves for that matter. There's a lovely little city called Settlers Gain, where the Lumineth live in perfect, and not at all brainwash-induced, harmony with humans and dwarfs. The Lumineth believed it's been such a great success that they plan on forming other settlements like it across and beyond. They even help form magical colleges across the realms, much like Teclis did for the Empire of Man of old. The Lumineth are quite willing to play the role of big damn heroes, rather than sitting on their island or craft world and hoping to God the lesser races behave for more than 5 minutes at a time. And while it'll be coming back to Settlers Gate in the con section, it's important to note that there are genuine benefits to living there that you can't really get elsewhere. Magical automata do most of the menial work, as well as things like farming and whatnot, so pretty much everyone in it trains to be scholars, philosophers, and mages. If that sounds like a bunch of cringy liberal arts major to you, remember this is a Warhammer setting, and that training to be a philosopher mage involves practicing the best way to melt the face off of demons trying to eat yours, as well as debates on the meaning of life and all that crap. The human forces I mentioned earlier that helped Teclis defeat Nagash indeed came from here, so there's clearly something that's working out if you want good guys. The Lumineth do a pretty good job at that too by Warhammer standards. While yes, it may be typical elven arrogance, they do genuinely believe that their way is the best way to not only live, but to push back the forces of darkness. And they've had enough success with it that maybe there's something to that. Lumineth armies frequently show up without warning, a defense of the settlements or other factions, happy to stand against chaos wherever it rears its ugly head. Though Tyrion even leads forces of all races en masse against chaos, the undead, and more. Oh, and if you love ancient Greece, you'll love the Lumineth. The elven gods have always been rather reminiscent of the Greek pantheon, and Othawan may as well have just been Atlantis with pointier ears. But now, I mean, just look at them. Those are hoplites. They may be called Venari Realm-Lords, but come on, these are hoplites with pointier ears and even taller helmet crests now. I, of course, love elves the most, but that doesn't mean I dislike dwarfs. And if you're like me and also have a healthy respect for the Suntas, the Lumineth are definitely worth a look at the very least. They use magic-shaped rocks, use magical crystals for power and more, and overall have come around to the dwarf idea that stone is quite a handy material to work with. Their mega unit, aside from Teclis, is wearing a mountain range on her shoulders. Clearly the Lumineth know how to rock in stone. One of their wizards is straight up called a stone mage, and you'll notice more than a few warhammers in a full Lumineth army. So if you prefer elves, you'd want a little sprinkling of dwarf in there. You want these guys, of course, if you hate elves, and you will likely be raging at the audacity of these knife ears to be copying proper dwarven ingenuity with magic. But please take time to consider that you are wrong. Another positive that I hugely support is that the Lumineth have a wonderful built-in advantage against chaos and necromancy. Light magic in Warhammer has always been anathema to chaos. While it's hard to control, it's very orderly and stable, the polar opposite of chaos. It's why all the spirits in the realm of Heshir, outright called geomantic, there are a bunch of cube ghosts that it's perfectly suited to turning back chaotic corruption. It is unbelievably nice to see magic being used as a hard counter to chaos rather than someone casting a lightning bolt at a demon, and then their head explodes. Similarly, its pure properties make flushing out necromancy and death magic a breeze too, and if all this sounds a bit too narratively convenient for the Lumina, consider this. While the orcs may be the best that the whole belief becomes reality thing, it applies to all Warhammer races to some degree, and when you take something that by its nature is the polar opposite of the corruptive forces of Warhammer, train a bunch of people to use it well, and then have them be utterly convinced in their beliefs that not only is this the best way to fight chaos, but they're the best at it. I think it only makes sense that the Lumineth had such success against K and the undead so far. It could even explain why they're kinda struggling with the forces of destruction. They don't give a about orderly lines or random chaos crap. Either way, they just want to smash stuff. Regardless, if you hate chaos like I do, the Lumineth are quite possibly the best army for you because their entire realm of existence is a hard counter to it. Lastly, if you want a faction that is backed up by some serious power, you want the Lumina. At the end of the day, the Lumineth are not just another group of arrogant elves. They are warriors of balance, standing against the forces of darkness, with unwavering resolve. Whether you love them or hate them, you can't deny their impact on the mortal realms. And there's my do or don't Lumineth Realm-Lords, or realistically, my dude Lumina Throne-Lords. Because you should take the Lumineth the Realm-Lords. I love the Realm-Lords. I love them. I love elves. I will not be taking my medication. I love elves, and that's it. You've survived yet another video of mine. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and leave a comment to let me know what you think. Or just rant about some filthy Xenos. That works too. Thank you to my channel members. You are the ether quartz to my Lumineth Throne-Lords, giving me the boost I need to keep going at the cost of minor crack addiction. No, I'm not addicted to crack. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching and take care out there. Music. Now, all this being said, it's still better to live as an ogre. Eat big, live big, fight big. 8 dwarves, 8 elves, 8 humans. Don't hate them, 8 them. Simple as.